Welcome back to The Couch, another great episode, and I'm super excited today because we are talking e-commerce, which is the flavour of the month right now. In fact, the flavour of the last 12 months. With more than 15 years of global e-commerce experience, he's now leading BigCommerce's APAC operations. This includes the oversight of all the local marketing and sales activities, as well as working to grow the business across the region. He's also a big believer in the best of breed technology stacks and also platform customization. So joining me is the Vice President and General Manager of APAC at BigCommerce. Welcome to the couch, Shannon Ingrey.
Hey, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Thanks for joining us and talking e-com. How have you probably start as we kind of get to? I'm going to be really positive and say the back end of COVID. Who knows what the? Well, I'm putting it out there, but let's just say, in the world of e-commerce, how have you seen things change or been changing, especially in the last 3 months while COVID's been on around e-commerce?
Yeah, it's been an interesting ride, that's for sure. We went from those first few weeks of just uncertainty and no one knew what the future held to figuring out it wasn't quite so bad as what we all thought. And now, as you said, we're kind of coming out the tail end. We certainly saw in those first kind of month to 2 months with the closure of stores, we just saw a massive surge in online and e-commerce because, people just had to procure their goods from somewhere. People still need retail therapy for non-essential items, which was a little bit controversial at the time as well. Like, should I be buying this pair of jeans when there's people trying to get goods through the postal system? But we've just seen an overall massive shift to e-commerce, and while we expect that's going to level out, and we're already starting to see a little bit of that as stores reopen. Certainly, I think it's given e-commerce penetration in Australia a bit of a kick in the butt.
Yeah, it's interesting how you say you're thinking things or planning that things might level out. But I was interested to, I read before that before COVID, there was predictions in 2020 that we'd have something like 2 billion global digital buyers out there, buying online. So do you think when we look at the bricks and mortar stores kind of starting to open up that there's going to be a continued kind of trend towards the online, or will we see then this uplift of going back into the bricks and mortar, or maybe a mixture of both?
I think there'll be a mix of both. Like there's always going to be people that want to shop in stores for certain items like this. You still can't get that touchy-feely kind of experience across an e-commerce that, luxury goods offer, and, buying a car, for example. Although we have seen some good examples of people pivoting and being able to sell cars online. But, you're always going to have people that want to shop in stores. It's different country to country, but Australians as a race, we love to, shop in stores. We love to go and hang out at the Westfield and have lunch and have coffee and walk around. And even if we're not buying it, we're still walking into stores and browsing. So there will always be an element of that. In terms of the growth in online, I do think that we've now, pushed past the point of where we were expecting to grow over the next 3 to 4 years. And I don't see us coming back from that. I think we've adapted, different channels of people or different demographics of people that, may not have shopped online as frequently or may have been laggards and refused to shop online that have now started. And it only takes, a few purchases to realize how easy things are, and they show up on your doorstep, and, that those people are going to continue to keep those habits.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think as you mentioned, like it's the experience that brings us back, the shopping experience that brings us in store to some of the bricks and mortar stores. I suppose if we talk about experience online, mobile commerce, again, that's a huge trend. I reckon, 54% of total e-commerce sales in 2021 next year would be around mobile commerce. But this same survey that I read said that 12% of consumers find shopping on the mobile web convenient as well. So is there really going to be this kind of shift, I suppose, from us? And maybe that's the connection between going in store and being out and about online, is using the mobile more.
Mm-hmm. I think there's, like you said, it's always a blend. I don't think we can ever say like we're going all in on one channel. Mobile is a great source of transaction, but it's also a great source of information. Looking at, like I'm big shopper myself online. I also shop a lot in stores, and I like to watch how people shop as well. I was in Rebel Sport the other day. I was buying some new shoes for my son. And I wanted to just check, you just kind of a bit hit and miss on quality. So brought up the Rebel Sport website while I was in the store, checked the reviews, like those type of things that are, just informing more of an in-store purchase as well. Like mobile is definitely a big supporter of all kinds of retail. But like you said, there is a big trend towards driving actual transactions on mobile. But I don't think you could ever go all in on one channel. Like you can't say, let's just build for mobile.
Yeah, I think one of the things I used to love about shopping, for example, I think one of the trends in time of how retail has changed is when the Apple stores came out, and the idea that you could go in and touch and feel the products, use the products or whatever, and then when you wanted to make a purchase, there wasn't go over and stand in a queue to make the transaction. Mm-hmm. The actual person that was serving you would bring up a kind of a mobile device and do your transaction there and email you the receipt. That kind of convenience, I think, is probably, do you think, what people are going to want more of? That seamless kind of, I suppose, input from the salesperson, but then making it really easy to make the purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're already seeing that a lot. Apple were definitely the pioneers of it, but that's been around for quite a number of years now. I think having people, and this could kind of convert into a bit of a COVID type situation as well, right? Taking products and standing in a line at a checkout with other people, is that a thing of the past? Yeah, is that a thing of the past? It'll be interesting to see how retailers adapt and how consumers adapt to what we have to do now.
So let's talk about B2B, because I know a lot of times people put e-commerce in the B2C kind of space, but I know obviously BigCommerce, a big driver for you guys is the B2B buyer. From what I've felt a lot is that B2B buyers like, the idea of e-commerce because they want to give that B2C like experience that enables, suppliers to provide a more personalized, even individualized service. Why do you think B2B companies, like, especially coming out of COVID, that traditionally would have had just the normal process of purchase, maybe in their shop or in their office or online through a website, maybe starting to think about how they could use e-commerce?
Well, I mean, B2B is interesting because, a B2B buyer and a B2C buyer are essentially the same thing. They're both humans that need to make a transaction, and you need to give them the information that they need and make their checkout flow as easy as possible. But the fundamentals of B2B means that there's typically a few more steps or a bit more complexity in the journey that person has to undertake. So, I'm all for simplifying the buying experience is what we say. So, thinking about that consumer as a consumer, it doesn't matter whether they're B2B or B2C, think through the journey, think through the experience that they need to have. What are the details that you need to capture? As a merchant, manufacturer, whoever I am, if I'm taking a transaction for $150 pair of jeans, or I'm taking a transaction for $150,000 train part, the process that person needs to go through to get to that transaction is probably a little bit different.
Yeah, and to your point as well, the buyer journey probably is more extended. Some things take shorter time, that you're probably going to have a need for. You're going to go on, you want to make an instant purchase, and some you need to probably research just that little bit more. So education plays a big part of that kind of process.
So exactly right. So like I was saying, you just need to think about who's your consumer, what is their path to purchase, and then designing experiences around them, regardless of if it's B2B or B2C. One of the things that we're starting to see a bit more at the moment is hybrid commerce. So that is a combination of the B2C and B2B customer experience into one platform, which, as you said, that's kind of what BigCommerce does. In our platform, we allow merchants to have their B2B and their B2C portal in one. So once the user logs in, you can provide a very B2C, one unit of this, one unit of that, go check out with my credit card, or, completely changing the experience to might be like a purchase grid where I can just go in and enter my PO and bring up my items, add all to basket, check out on invoice. So, enabling that in one platform obviously makes a big difference as well.
Yeah, certainly a huge difference. I think another one is if we sort of move towards, B2B trends, but this is probably also in the B2B space as well, is, having that fully personalized online shopping experience. Certainly, we've seen that being, amongst the top 5 priorities, especially in the B2B customer space. Something like 20% or so of customers would like that personalization. I think it's even greater in the B2C space. How is BigCommerce particularly sort of driving a more personalized shopping experience for clients?
Well, I wouldn't say that we are particularly driving it, but what we do is obviously provide the technology that allows you to customize that experience, either through your own front end designs and customizations, or using our technology partners to kind of plug into our platform. So we are more facilitators of technology. So we will open up our APIs and allow those things to be done on the front ends by our design partners and our technology partners.
Do you think voice is going to sort of start to play a part in e-commerce? Because we're doing a lot more in terms of voice activation as we move. Is that coming into play in this space?
This will be one of those moments where I'm going to say, I don't think it'll take off. And in 5 years, you're going to show me back this video and it's going to be massive and you're going to be like, I told you so, and it's going to ruin my career. Right. So I actually don't think it is. I think it will for the items that you use it for today. So, hey Siri, I need some milk. Hey, can order some toilet paper, and you have your favorite order saved at Amazon. I don't think it's going to take off if I say, hey Siri, I need a new pair of jeans in a size 30, because you just like, no. I just don't feel like there's like a
yeah. It's almost
I'm a big adapter of technology. Yeah, I'm a big adapter of technology. I'm a huge online shopper. I have packages arriving at my house pretty much daily, and it's not something that I have even considered doing yet.
Yeah. Actually, when you put it like that, it kind of makes sense, because it's not something you can say, hey Siri, find me a new Toyota Lexus by Friday. And there's exactly one suddenly appear. I mean, who knows? Maybe seamlessly, however it was, then that Lexus turns up out the front door, and they've already debited your account or started something. Maybe that's the future. Who knows?
But as a supporter of commerce, for sure, this is what we were getting back to with mobile before. If I say, hey Alexa, I'm going to go to the other side now since it said Siri a lot. Hey Alexa, can you find and send me information on that new Lexus? And then it connects with a dealer or Lexus themselves. They compile the information on the model you're looking for. They email it to you. In that email, you can read it. You can hit, okay, I want to buy it. And then you can kind of go on that purchase flow. But in terms of actually conducting a transaction, I don't see that outside kind of staple items.
Yeah. So in effect, it is helping e-commerce, but helping more the e-commerce journey of the education process rather than that final transaction at the end.
Correct. Yeah. That's a bit untapped at the moment. I think there's a big opportunity.
Yeah, certainly. What about niche platforms? If we look at that, I read somewhere that instead of shopping on platforms such as Amazon, which is just a behemoth, a massive kind of platform where you do a product search and it returns like thousands and thousands of different options for you that you got to sift through and find the right one. Do you see niche platforms providing more of a tailored experience becoming more of a trend?
I do and I don't. I guess by niche platforms, if we're talking marketplaces, I think that's something different. But a niche platform, I think, would just be kind of like a D2C type site. If we are talking about marketplaces, then potentially, like if it was just a homewares marketplace or something along those lines, then for sure, if I can go somewhere it's like going to the mall and going like, hey, here's the ladies fashion section. That's where my wife wants to go shop. She can go walk around, and they kind of like have a little bit siloed. If I could go there and then shop for all my goods in one spot, if I'm looking for a new lounge and I could go to a homeware marketplace or a lounge marketplace, it would be then yes. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, marketplaces are great. They serve a really good purpose, but in terms of then going into more niche marketplaces, it's kind of a bit hard to get cut through.
Do you think, because I think there's been some examples of this trend happening in industries, particularly like healthcare. So, you know, instead of going to, as I say, like the Amazon example, where you're going to and getting everything in one big search, if you know that there's a particular niche store that you can go to where it's all healthcare products, or I don't know, sleep health products or something like that. You know, do you think that's kind of some move for that, where people are going to start to kind of levitate?
Well, I don't think that's really like a marketplace is really just a brand or a retailer, right? That's selling other people's products. I don't really think that's any different to just standard direct to consumer retail. You know, regardless of if it's a marketplace or if it's direct, it would just be about that brand's effectiveness to build an audience basically and drive a transaction. So, yeah, I do feel like it has merit if the brand or the marketplace behind it is strong enough to build that that audience.
Do you think, as we kind of get out of, well, again, you know, being positive here, getting out of COVID or post-COVID, do you think that, you know, we're becoming obviously more sensitive to our environment for, you know, how things have kind of changed, even bringing back the debates prior to COVID of climate control? Do you think B2B e-commerce is maybe becoming a little bit more eco-conscious in a way?
I think that the people that are behind commerce in general are definitely becoming a lot more conscious of their contribution back to the environment or lack thereof. You know, there's some really interesting numbers coming out around, you know, different demographics of people and how they feel about that. And it's really interesting that the younger generation coming through now are saying that, you know, they will only shop with ethically sourced retailers or retailers that have carbon offset. Like, it's definitely a priority for those demographics that are coming up.
Yeah, yeah,
and they're the future in these businesses. So if it's a priority for them as a person, as a consumer, it will become a priority for them to drive change within their organizations once they're employees of that organization. So there will definitely be some movement coming.
Yeah, I think it's certainly, like, we're seeing, you know, the current unrest around the world, and, you know, the stuff we've gone through COVID is being socially responsible as well for organizations to get that across. So it's not just I don't know, seen as a money-making transaction thing, that you actually care as a brand.
Yeah, that the brand is giving back. You know, it's one thing that I find really interesting, is that, you know, the concept of the brands being almost human, like they're a personality in themselves or a persona in themselves. And, you know, it's like people's expectations are that your brand has some human elements to it and that it cares. Whereas, you know, if we look back 20 years ago, you know, a brand was just a manufacturer of a product and no one really cared. It's like, is it cool or is it not? But today it's obviously very different.
Yeah. Do you believe, like certainly with content, like being such an important part, if we look at, you know, people that maybe haven't already really developed their e-com store, they're starting to plan their e-com store, is rather than thinking of e-commerce being, in some cases, just the transaction, here's my product, purchase it, that perhaps that whole buyer journey that we like to call, you know, the awareness stage, the consideration stage, the decision stage, and the purchase stage, that all of that part needs to be mapped out. And did you think e-commerce kind of plays a role across that whole journey?
Yeah, for me, it's all about the experience first, and then that leads to a transaction. So for me, it's you know, your product success will be driven by the emotional connection that somebody builds to it. So whether that's around, like you said, you know, building an awareness campaign and, you know, driving knowledge about where that product is manufactured or why it's special or what its social responsibility position is, you know, those kind of things are what people drive, like people form emotional connections with. And then that's ultimately what's going to drive a transaction. So your goal should be, sales should be an afterthought. Like 100% everyone's businesses run on end sales, but driving the story and building the content around developing an emotional connection to that product is what's going to ultimately lead to those sales.
And I suppose it's important when we think about it, not just content, but also just, you know, using data through that whole experience. Like, if we go back to B2B buyers, you know, thinking about the importance of having that omni-channel experience. So the omni-channel presence. So of course you've got things like your website, your true kind of business, and your e-store or whatever. I noticed, again, without throwing too many stats at the average B2B buyer, they say, uses 6 different channels. So how, what's your experience been in, again, when you're developing this store, if you're developing it for the first time, realizing that they're going to end up on the store, but they might come to it from maybe one of 6 different channels?
That's the complexity, and that's where I always say to people, like, definitely get some advice, either from an agency or hire, those skill sets, because your B2B buyer personas are so much different to your B2C, and the channels that they're coming from, when we talk about developing specific content plans or engagement plans for each channel as well. So if they're coming through B2B portals, they're coming through marketplaces, they might be coming through like review sites, that person's kind of interpretation of the brand, their trustworthiness of the brand is going to be very different depending on where they come from. And so in terms of where you land them on the site, or how you educate them, what details you're capturing, you want to have a very sophisticated buyer journey mapped out.
When you talk about, you mentioned there, the kind of the details that you're capturing, it kind of like moves on to the next thing, which is data or data, depending on where you're coming from or what team it's from.
Or if you work for an American company. Yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of, I actually say data from my English way background, but data or data, they reckon it's king, obviously, and being able to understand like more about the customers once you've got that e-store up and running, and to get repeat transactions. What is the sort of the data we should be tracking? What are some of the key numbers, the key metrics that you feel are really critical to being able to deliver that perfect experience each time?
Well, I guess it depends, different depending on your product and your goals. I would say for a kind of cookie cutter e-com business, B2B or B2C, you definitely want to look at your acquisition costs. You want to look at your lifetime value. You want to look at your either NPS or CSAT. Like, they're just the basic high level metrics that you want to be viewing. Essentially, what that means is acquisition cost. It's, what does it cost you to acquire that customer? And that could be acquire into your database, or it could be acquire to a transaction. And then lifetime value is figuring out, once you acquire somebody, so once they've made their first purchase with you, how, what is their expected, or what does the data tell you? How many times are they going to shop with you? What's the average transaction going to be, and how long do they typically become a customer for? So, they're the types of things that you want to be measuring and making sure that you're capturing.
Are we getting really clever, you think, now with data? Say, obviously using BigCommerce and other kind of data platforms that are out there, to be able to start using it to predict stuff, to be able to think ahead and say, look, based on historical data, we can kind of now start to, predict trends and start to make decisions based on data.
Yeah, for sure. There's a bunch of MarTech providers, marketing technology, MarTech providers that specialize in that. They will take a data ingest of your transactions and your customers. They'll provide you all of that insight, and then they have a bunch of scripts that can live on the site. And so, as a new customer is coming to the site, it already knows about them from their IP address. It knows where they're coming from. So if I'm coming from a paid ad in Google using this search term, it knows, based on all of the history, that my percentage to potential to convert is X. If I convert, then I turn into an LTV of Y. Like, there is a bunch of tools like that are super sophisticated, and even go as far as into product recommendations and a bunch of different things.
Yeah, you can go a bit crazy with data, I think.
Oh, you can go. I love geeking out on that stuff. It's my background before BigCommerce, and I love it. It's pretty crazy what you can do.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing how people don't even use the basic stuff. Like it's everyone has a digital footprint. Like we know it's there, no matter how much you hide. So just being able to use that to make the buying experience even more seamless, I think just makes total sense.
Mm.
Probably as we get towards the end, is there anything that you're working on, like in the shadows there, like for BigCommerce? Like what are the plans that you see? Like we talked about how things have grown in the last 12 months, and we're kind of coming out of COVID. Like where do you think things are? What are you guys working on? Is there anything new kind of on the horizon from BigCommerce?
Yeah, we have a bunch of really interesting things. Obviously, internationalization is a massive part of our platform and our strategy at the moment. Through Australia, we opened an office in Singapore last year. We opened an office in Europe the year before that. So, really just buttoning down. As you can imagine, when you run an e-commerce platform, there's a lot of really interesting and quirky little region-specific nuances that you deal with, different social media platforms, different payment gateways, and you're always wanting to get all them integrated so that, merchants can come and they can just tick a box and they can be ready to go with the latest and greatest stuff. So, that's a really big thing that we spend a lot of time on.
Yeah, fantastic. So some exciting things to look out for on the runway ahead for BigCommerce. Yeah, yeah. And obviously things, obviously seem to be growing for e-commerce generally. So it's all gonna work together. But really appreciate you joining me from your couch to my couch, where we're kind of in. Well, you more so than me, 'cause I'm actually in the office kind of studio here. You're still in lockdown.
Still stuck at home.
But nice to see you, Shannon Ingrey. Thanks for joining us on the couch.
Great. Thanks so much.